Hello, and welcome to The Inner Noise, the podcast to get back to you. Look around you. People are exhausted. And you know why? Not because they did too much, because they didn't dare, because they waited, because they wanted to be sure, sure before speaking, before changing, before starting. And in the meantime, the body kept carrying. The shoulders, the stomach, that tension that never quite goes away. That background noise that won't let go. You wake up in the morning with that feeling, not really rested, not really there, as if something had been running all night without you asking it to. And you still can't find the word for it. You just know it's there. And that's what we're talking about today. A very specific kind of exhaustion. The kind that doesn't come from doing too much, the kind that comes from waiting too long to be sure. We were taught something that looked like wisdom. Think before you act. Wait until you're ready. Think twice before you speak. Be sure. And yes, there's something true in all of that. But there's a point where preparation becomes a prison, where I'm not ready yet becomes a way to never leave, where I wait until I'm sure becomes a way to never risk anything, which, when you think about it, is just another word for procrastination. So I want to ask one question. Be sure, but of what exactly? Sure, it's going to work. Nobody can promise you that. Sure, you won't make a mistake? Well, everyone gets it wrong sometimes. Sure, the people around you will understand, approve, validate? That may never happen. So, if you're waiting for that kind of certainty, you might be waiting for a long time. You might be waiting your whole life. And the problem with waiting is that it has a cost, an invisible one, because not acting looks like calm. It looks like caution. Nobody can criticize you for something you haven't done yet. That's true. But underneath, not acting is also a way to make a decision. And that decision has consequences, like every decision does, just like any choice you will make. Because, yes, inaction is an action. Think about someone in your life who waited. Not someone lazy, someone smart, someone thoughtful, who had all the pieces and knew what to do and still waited. One more month, one more analysis, one more internal debate, and eventually the window closed, the door closed, the bridge came down. You can't pass, you can't step up because time passed. Not because that person wasn't capable, but because that person wanted to be sure. What I notice a lot is that paralysis has almost nothing to do with lacking information. You know, most of the time, you already know. You feel it in your body before you can put it into words. But if you listen to the part of you that resists, what does your head say? It says, what if it falls? It says, what if you're wrong? And it also says, what if you put everything you have into this and the outcome isn't what you hoped for? And that's it. It's not the fear of acting, it's the fear of the outcome that follows. And that fear gets installed very early. From a young age, we learn that certain actions have consequences on what we are worth in other people's eyes. You succeed, they love you. You fail, they are disappointed. And the brain takes note. It learns that the outcome isn't just an outcome, it's an evaluation. So the brain does what it was built to do. As far back as prehistoric, the brain has had one job. One of its job. It was keep you safe. It will stop you from leaving the cave to find food if it spotted something suspicious nearby. Something that looks like danger, a tiger, a threat, and it will do everything to keep you inside. Okay, we live in a modern world now, no tiger in the cities, exception sometimes, but the mechanism hasn't changed. And this way of operating over time is exhausting because the energy you spend not acting, justifying, postponing is often heavier than the energy it would take to simply step through the door. And it gets very heavy when every action has to prove your right to exist, when every decision has to confirm your worth, when every outcome becomes an evaluation of who you are. Because at that point, acting becomes dangerous. If the outcome isn't good, it's not just the action that fails, it's you. At least, that's what your brain believes. So, you want to act, but you're afraid of the outcome. Okay? You want to move forward, but you want to be sure, right? You want to change, but you don't want to lose anything. Fair. And since there are no guarantees, you stay there, waiting, carrying, getting tired. Let's take small examples. You have that project sitting in a drawer, that message you wrote and never sent, that conversation you've been putting off for months, and every day that passes without you moving, you add another layer of justification. Until you've almost forgotten the step you wanted to take in the first place. You are just stuck. And the hardest part is that from the outside, nobody sees a thing. Because on the outside, you keep going. You reply when someone talks to you, you show up at work, you deliver what uh, you've been asked for, you pick up the kid up from the school, you do the shopping, you're still just as present with your partner, your family, at work, with your friends, and nobody can see from the outside what's happening on the inside. Truth is that nobody really asks. On the street, at work, when you run into someone, you know that it's hey, how are you? And usual answer is, good, thank you. And everyone moves on. And it's very, very rare that someone asks a second time, right? So maybe the real question isn't how do I become sure? Maybe the real question is what I am sacrificing while I wait. Let me tell you something. A long, long time ago on the battlefield, a man surrounded on one side his own people, on the other side, what he has to face. The confrontation is imminent. The tension is at its peak. There's nothing left to negotiate. There is no more time to postpone. This is the point of no return. And the next action clearly belongs to him. Something he has been preparing for years. And at the moment when everything is in place, when there's nothing left to wait for, he freezes. His hand trembles. What he had always held slips from his finger. His mouth goes dry. His skin burns. His mind spins like crazy and won't stop. He collapses. Not a metaphor. Literally, physically, he collapses. His body gives way. And what's striking about this scene is that this man is not someone weak. He is trained, prepared, skilled. He has been through a whole process to get here. He knows exactly what he has to do. He always has. And that's precisely why the collapse is so powerful. Because this isn't the doubt of a beginner, it's the vertigo of someone who sees clearly what lies ahead, who sees the consequences of his actions, who sees what he stands to lose, and whose body says no, literally no, before even his mind has even finished thinking. And in this scene, there is someone beside him, a man who watches. And this man doesn't say, come on, you got this, you can do it. He doesn't say, you have no choice, let's go. And he doesn't say, look at everything we've prepared, go, go, go. No, 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 no. This man, beside our principal character, just ask one question, just one. Why are you so attached to the outcome? Because this man had seen something the other hadn't yet seen. The paralysis didn't come from a lack of courage. It came from this demand for certainty, from this invisible contract we want to sign with life. Like, I give you my energy, you guarantee me the outcome. But life doesn't sign that contract at all. What the man beside him said next is something very simple and very profound. He told him, "You have the right to act, not the fruits of your actions. What belongs to you is the action, the gesture, the direction you choose, the quality of what you put into what you do. What doesn't fully belong to you is what comes after." And for the modern human being, that's almost unbearable. Because we want to own everything, even the future, even other people's reactions, even the way our courage will be received. But maybe that's exactly where it starts. Maybe freedom begins precisely there, when you stop trying to own the outcome and come back to what truly belongs to you. Your intention, your gesture, your next step. Because one step is possible, one step you can breathe through, one step doesn't ask you to know the whole map. It just asks you to be a little more honest about what's here. And I want to make a distinction that feels important to me. There's a difference between clarity and control. Clarity looks at reality and it says, here's what I know, here's what I don't, here's the right next step. Control wants to own the future, and it says, I won't move until I'm sure everything will go exactly the way I want. And since the future is always uncertain, control is never satisfied. It always wants more. One more piece of proof, one more sign, one more delay. And you, in the meantime, you're running on empty. So maybe at some point, you have to stop asking life for a guarantee it cannot give and come back to something simpler. What it is right now. Not perfect? Right. What do your shoulders already know? What is your stomach trying to tell you? What are you holding back because you want a guarantee that life cannot give you? And everything we've just moved through together, this relationship to action, to outcome, to fear, to inner tension, there's an ancient wisdom running through all of it. At the heart of an Indian text, the Bhagavad Gita, written over 5,000 years ago and still relevant today. That's what makes it remarkable. A dialogue between a warrior paralyzed by doubt and the one who accompanies him through his confusion. That warrior is Arjuna. The one beside him is Krishna, one of the incarnations of Vishnu in the Hindu tradition. I think remember that is the 8 versions. And what's powerful about this scene isn't the religious context, it's the human scene. A human being who has to act but can't anymore, who sees the consequences, who carries the weight of everything that could happen, and who collapses, not because he's weak, because he wants to understand the outcome before entering the action. Does any of that sound familiar? Krishna doesn't judge Arjuna's collapse. He doesn't minimize it. He steps into he steps into it with him. He asks the question nobody else dares to ask. The Bhagavad Gita is 18 chapters of a conversation at the edge of the abyss. Not a manual, not a moral lecture. A dialogue between someone who no longer knows how to move forward and someone who reminds him where he can act from. And Krishna says something far more subtle. In Sanskrit, it goes Karmanye vadikaraste ma paleshu kadashana. Pardon my French. Translation is not word for word, but the way you can feel it is kind of a you have the right to act, not the fruits of your actions. Act from a place deeper than fear, ego, and attachment to outcomes. And then Arjuna got back up. He acted without certainty about the outcome, simply doing what belonged to him to do. And that's where this brings up to something interesting. Expectation. You know that expectations can block you. Because if you act while waiting for a specific outcome, it's the outcome that holds your energy hostages, not the action. And this text doesn't talk about your exhaustions on your overloaded schedule, but it speaks to the person who wants to change but is waiting to be sure, to the person who wants to speak but fears the reaction, to the person who carries everything but no longer knows what truly belongs to them. This ancient text speaks to you, just to you. And what I find beautiful about all of this is that it doesn't ask you to be certain, it doesn't ask you to be ready, it just asks you to come back to what is really yours. Your gesture, your direction, your presence in what you do. Because the rest doesn't belong to you. So maybe tonight or tomorrow or in the days ahead, the question to ask yourself isn't, I am sure. Maybe the question is more, what do I already know but haven't dared to live yet? You've been listening to The Inner Noise, the podcast to get back to you. This week, we talk about a very specific kind of exhaustion, the kind that doesn't come from doing too much, the kind that comes from waiting to be sure before daring to act. And we discovered through the Bhagavad Gita that even though the world has moved on technologically, the Indians struck again with their ancient wisdom. Because 5,000 years later, we're still saying the same thing about these questions. What belongs to you is the step, not the outcome. If this episode spoke to you, subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Next week, we'll be talking about something many people have lost without realizing it. Something that was there in you before the doubt, before the fear, before all of it. Thank you for listening. See you next week.